Hello guys, welcome to my channel once again. In today's video, we'll be drafting this beautiful Ankara short displayed on the screen. The measurements we'll be needing are the waist, hip, crotch length, round thigh and trouser length. Okay, alright, I've gone ahead to draw border lines on both sides of the trouser, which will be serving as the starter line. And then I also went ahead to measure the short length, which is measuring 18 inches, and I added 2 inches for allowance, making it 20. Alright, from starting line, we're placing our crotch depth measurement, which is usually done by sitting on a flat surface and then taking it from your waist. That's placing the tape from the beginning of your waist down to the flat surface. Mine measured 12 inches and then I placed that on the paper. Okay, so I also went ahead to draw out my hip line measurement, which for a standard measurement is usually between 8 to 9 inches and can vary depending on body type. So afterwards, I went ahead to take my hip measurement dividing by 4 and then I placed it on the crotch line, the hip line and the waistline, and then I drew a line across that. So from that point, we'll be taking our crotch extension, and the formula for the crotch extension is the hip measurement divided by 16. For example, my hip measurement is 38, so 38 divided by 16, I got 2.375. I went ahead to place it on that point, and then from the waistline, I came in by half an inch, and then I'm going to be joining those 3 points together using my French curve. Alright, after I did that, I went ahead to measure my divide my waist measurement by 4 and then I placed it on the waistline and I joined it to the hip. If you notice, I added no darts to this front block, emphasis on the front block. Alright, so I went ahead to determine the midpoint of my block and then I placed my thigh measurement equally on both sides. That is, my round thigh measurement is 24 divided by 2 is 12. So on this pattern paper, I'm placing 6 inches on both sides of the paper just to make everything centralized. And then I placed my lower thigh measurement on it and then I joined all points together. I also joined the lines extending it out to the allowance. So instead of straight lines, I draw out slant lines in order for it to be balanced when turned on fabric. Well, this will be explained more when we are making the sewing tutorial. So from the waistline, I went down by 1.5 inches, which is our band. You can go down by 2 inches if you prefer, but I prefer 1.5 inches. So I just took 1.5 inches out of that. So that line is the new waistline and this will be cut out for the band. And then from that top waistline, I went down by half an inch to give the front of the short a balanced look. Yeah, then I just drew that out with a French curve and then I had to take half an inch round, excluding this outer seam and then the hem allowance because I already took allowance for that. So this is basically all for the front block. We'll be heading to the back one now. Alright, so for the back block, the first thing I did was take out 3 inches from this line, which will be serving as our allowance later. And then I went ahead to draw out the length. I marked down the crotch line, the hip line. Then I placed the hip divided by 4 on the crotch, waist and hip line and joined the 3 points together. I also took out 1.5 inches allowance on the top part for the band. Well, at this point you notice that the pattern is more or less like drafting for the front. The only difference is the crotch extension and the allowance will be adding. Alright, so the formula for the crotch extension for the back block will be your hip measurement divided by 8. So mine is 4.75, yes, 38 divided by 8. That was what I placed on the crotch extension line. And now from this waistline, I came up by half an inch and I also came in by half an inch. So I'll be joining the 3 points together using the French curve. Yeah. Alright, so the next thing we'll be doing is to be taking our waist measurement divided by 4 and placing it on the waistline. Mine is 26 divided by 4 is 6.5 plus 1 inch for that, which is 7.5. so I joined the point using a straight line. The next thing we'll be doing is to be dividing or determining the midpoint of this line in order to get our dart. Alright, so I just did that and marked it down. So from that point, we'll be going down by 4.5 inches for the dart. Alright, so I just marked that down and joined the 2 points using a straight line. So from this midpoint on both sides, we'll be going in by half an inch and then joining it down to the 4.5 that we took earlier. So this is our dart. Alright, and then I'll be joining the waist line to the hip line using our French curve, which gives us the shape. I hope we understand this pattern. I hope it's friendly enough because I try to make it as simple as possible. Alright, so in order to get our brown tie for the back block, we'll be reintroducing the front pattern, and from this midpoint where these two lines meet, we'll be making sure we place them on the back block so they are on the same point together. Just make sure they are just make sure they are placed well, like on the same point, because if you are using a marker for this pattern, it will definitely show on the other side of the paper, so that can be your guideline for placing it on that side. Alright, so I'm just going to be holding it down, securing it using a paper tape. Alright, from this crotch extension point for the front, we'll be taking whatever measurement we have for the back extension. Note that I'm not taking it from the allowance, so mine measured 2.5. I also placed that 2.5 on the tie line and on the M line, then I marked those points together. I also went ahead to trace out the side seam of the front block on the back block. I just traced out the lower tie line there, and then I drew out those points, or I joined those points using a ruler. Now we will be coming back to this 3 inches margin line we left earlier, which I was explaining that was going to be used for allowance. So if you can remember, for the front block we did not add allowance at all to it, so that allowance will be adding it to the back. So now I'll be adding 2 inches allowance on the side seam, 1 inch for the front and 1 inch for the back, just to give it a balanced. And then on the waistline I added half an inch allowance for joining, and I also added half an inch allowance for joining on the crotch line. Note that I did not add any allowance on the inner tie line, which is the inseam line, because it was already added when I measured the difference between the front and back crotch extension, which is what I did earlier, and that was that 2.5 inches, so we do not need any allowance for that part. Alright, so I'm just going to cut it out now, and this is basically all for the pattern. In our next video, we'll be drafting out the pockets and the sewing of the shorts. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and tap on the notification bell so you'll be notified anytime I post this video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next one. Bye.